Good evening to you. I wanted to mention to you a couple of items just to be aware of. For the first weeks of this class, I had you look at Chapter 1 on defining technical writing, which is on pages 2 to 18. And specifically, I had mentioned to you before that I wanted you to look at ethics in the workplace that goes from about pages 13 to pages 18. But with the chapter on ethics, I asked you to use that in responding at the discussion board. One of the big issues that I also wanted to mention to you is on 17. If you take this class or if you take, advanced composition, you do not have to document what's called common knowledge. And, the Challenger space shuttle exploded and several astronauts were killed. When the United States Olympics was in Salt Lake City, there were no incidents of domestic terrorism. Of course, when the Olympics, I believe when they were in Germany, there was terrorism, and I believe that was in the 70s. But what I'm trying to say is, common knowledge does not have to be documented. But if you are borrowing information and you're using information, for example, for a website or whatnot, or for some, use where you're going to make money or profit from it, then you do need permission. Where you don't is what's called fair use. And as a student, you don't have to request from Time Magazine that you're using images from them or, anything like that. Of course, naturally, like if you're using Google Images and others, those are freely available non-trademarked images. But as I said, if if you're doing something for profit, then you have to ask for permission. But as a student, there's what's called the fair use doctrine. I also wanted to mention too, and I've talked about this a little bit, but in chapter 5, the whole chapter talks about letters, memos, other different types of documents, that you have to do. But I did mention to you, there is a section in here on writing email, and it's more towards, it's more towards the end of the paragraph, or the end of the chapter, which goes like on 178 on, and they give some suggestions on writing email more effectively, and even guideline 9 on page 171, which I agree with. When composing an important message, consider composing it in your word processor. And you can, what I often do is when I need to send an important email, I write it in Word formatted a little bit, and then I copy and paste it into the email. And then that way I'm more certain that it has been looked at and, reviewed. Something that I did want to, mention to you a little bit from the chapter is they cover letters, memos, and so on. But there are a few pages in here that I wanted to reference. They talk about general guidelines for correspondence, and that could be a letter, that could be a memo, that could be an email, that could be a letter report, a memo report, or whatnot. And I just wanted you to take a look at that. It's like on 152 and 153. But of course, knowing your readers, which is obviously, an important factor. And even in the very back of this book, there's this planning guide or planning sheet, which helps you to plan documents for this class or, work. But it's asking you, who are your readers? Are they decision makers? Are they advisors? Are they managers? Who are they? And then they mention as far as follow the correct format. And then they go through with follow the ABC format. The ABC format is used all throughout this book. The abstract, the body, and the conclusion. And you will see that use consistently, use the 3C strategy, which is capture, convince, and contact. Stress the you attitude, which I think is very, very important, no matter if you're writing an email, if you're writing a letter, or especially, memo, but if you're trying to persuade someone, and edit carefully and respond as quickly as you can. So I just wanted to refer you, as I said, to those two chapters. Chapter 1 is actually very, very important. In Chapter 2, which you were to look at for this week, it talks about process and technical writing, and as far as the process of gathering information, revising, editing, and so on. One of the intentional strategies that I do for this class, for the bigger projects like the consumer report and the written instructions and others, is I have you submit a proposal for each of those, and even for the consumer report, I have you do a summary of sources. So when we get it to about 3/4 of the way through the course, I ask you to find 4 sources related to your topic for your consumer report. So like if you're buying a new laptop, a tablet, a big screen TV, or even a pair of running shoes, or a new bow and arrow, a handgun. People have bought, motorcycle boots, any number of items. But I asked you to write a synopsis or a summary of sources for your consumer report. So, we do that. But anyhow, Chapter 2 mostly focuses on gathering information. I wanted to mention to you, too, on page 147 of 47, they talk a little bit about the difference between primary and secondary sources. And remember, primary sources are those you gather yourself: interviews, surveys, field work, personal observations, questionnaires, and so on. And then secondary are the ones that you gather from other places. When you do your consumer report, though, something that I would highly encourage you to do is not only just do internet research, but actually, if you can, go to different locations and talk to people. Some years back, my wife and I had a Maytag Neptune washer, and actually that's the front-loading washer that was so bad that it drove Maytag to go out of business and eventually be bought by Whirlpool. But we were so disgusted, and we had so many problems with that we saw a number of service people, and we asked them, what do you recommend? What brands do you like? And of course, they like Kenmore, they like Whirlpool, they gave KitchenAid and some other brands. And inevitably, after a research, my wife and I bought a Whirlpool Duet front-loading washer and dryer. We also bought like the stands underneath them, where you can store towels and laundry detergent and so on. And then we even bought this pretty neat cover for the top that you can put items on, and it's pretty handy for us. But we spent, about $1,500, and we probably had it, for 7, 8 years maybe. But boy, we have saved money because, number one, per wash load, you probably use about 15 gallons less to wash your clothing. Number two, without an agitator, it's much easier on your clothing and it lasts longer. And, like for women who are wearing silk blouses or whatnot, it doesn't tear the clothing, or sweaters. And, then it also spins out the clothing faster and drier, so it doesn't take as long to dry the clothing. So, we've spent some money at the beginning, but it really has saved us money, over time. So anyhow, we do, like I said, do a consumer report, for this class and written instructions. But I just wanted to, to mention to you as you go along, we will work on them in different stages. Collaboration and writing in Chapter 3 is actually a pretty good chapter, because it really talks about working in groups and organizing your writing. Now, if you ever work for a large organization, and I was talking about this in my in-class courses this week, some organizations will have what's called a style guide or style guidelines. And what that means is, like, if you work for Caterpillar Heavy Equipment, and if there is equipment failure of some sort, they have this form that you fill out that you have to make sure that you document what the problems are, because they want to, fix or rectify any issues. But memos, letters, incident reports, accident reports, all those types of things, that they have a specific format, plus they have a specific style that they want people to follow, their employees to follow in document layout, but also word choice and capitalization and all those types of things. Now, if you do work, together with a group of people and you don't have specific style guidelines, then I would encourage you to look at Chapter 5. And they do mention style sheets there on page 121, but some suggestions as far as like headings, subheadings, bullets, sentence length, use of in-text emphasis, and so on. And then they also go through elements of page design there on page 124 and throughout the rest of the chapter. But I would encourage you to look at that. In one of the classes that I have, we were looking at a document that I did for a textbook company some years back. And I was writing to give, it was an instructor's manual, and it was to give advice to new instructors teaching English 161, College Writing Composition 1 for the first time, and just on grading, giving feedback, and those types of things. But here at WCCC, we have a semester. And so the editor said, don't use the word semester, use the word term, since that's more generic. She didn't want me to use the word etc. She required everyone that was writing for this instructor's manual to use the word and so on. So, and she also liked to use certain transitions. And so my point, and headings and so on, but my point is that if you're writing with a group of people, you want to have some basic elements that you all are following to, to go through that. So I actually like this book a great deal. This is the 8th edition. I think I've used it ever since the 2nd edition. So it's Technical Communication, a Practical Approach, and it's a great, great book. And, like I said, encourage you to look at it. Besides Chapter 1 and Chapter 4, 5, 6, and 8, the one chapter that you really need to look at 2 or 3 times is Chapter 4 on organizing information. And they go through some of the key points there. But the one point that I wanted you to be aware of is on page 93, is the repeat key points. And that's really, really important in technical writing because you state your main findings and conclusions briefly in the introductory section. You develop them in the body in a redundant, repetitive manner, and then you repeat them in the conclusion. And the reason for that is not everyone wants to or needs to read the document from the beginning to the end. And so what the point that I'm mentioning here is, here it is on page 92. They call that the top-down format. And the top-down format is basically move logical from data to conclusions, and then you place the results first, followed by the details, and so on. But it provides a redundant, repetitive approach to technical communication. So that's mentioned on page 93. And again, you want to repeat your main findings and conclusions. And also there on page 94, they have the ABC format, which is stressed all throughout this book. The abstract, the body, and the conclusion. The one reason, like I said, why I like to go through some of these chapters is just to, review and have you look at them a little bit closer. But there's some really helpful, useful information in here. One of the chapter that I just wanted to refer you to while we're at it is Chapter 14, which they just added in this recent edition. And they have a web page and writing for the web, but there on page 529, they have a web planning form, as far as how to set up your web page and some of the major facets and aspects of it. So please continue to read the book. We will have a quiz a little bit later in the semester, but I will reference the book, and we use it pretty consistently. We do use it for the discussion board. We do a total of like 7 different discussion boards. And so I have you reference or refer to the elements of good technical writing throughout the course of the semester. Now, the other point that I wanted to mention to you is they have this, I'm going to take this into my in-class courses, but this is a magazine that I get. It's called Ricardo Quarterly, and you can actually search this on the internet. And it's a publication. It's written mainly for engineering people. A professor here at WCCC, Joseph Schott, he recommended it to me, and I get it now. And it's a magazine on designing engines and how that they design engines, or make solar powered vehicles, or and so on, or locomotives or whatnot, and what they do. One of the coolest ones that I read was how they designed a six-cylinder BMW motorcycle, and they wanted a motorcycle that was powerful across the torque band, because typically, if you ride a street motorcycle like a Ninja, a Hayabusa, I don't know what the Yamahas are, but those same, types of bikes, those sport bikes, the Honda has a CBR, but they're really popular, especially younger men. But the thing about those is they're only powerful within a certain, maybe say 3 to 6 or 7,000. That's where their main torque band is. And these BMW motorcycles that they designed they're from the low end to the high end. They perform well, so they're powerful, but they're smooth and they're fuel efficient, and so on. So they wanted to design a six-cylinder motorcycle that was ergonomically well designed, but it was also powerful and toured really well. So they were able to accomplish that. And I did read that article. And I recently read a good article in Ricardo about this Audi vehicle, and they wanted to make sure that it was quiet, but also that, on the inside, but it also had a certain sound to the exhaust, so that when you were accelerating it. They did a good article, too, about how in China, Jaguar reduced their vehicles down from 8 cylinders to 4 or 3, and made them really, really powerful so that they could reduce the luxury tax, or I guess they charge you by cylinders over in China. So it was a good article. So this is a trade publication, and this one happens to be free. But I would encourage you, while you are a college student, to belong to an organization for engineers, or for radiology technologists, or whatever your field is. But like they have SNAP, Student Nurses Association of Professionals, I guess. But they have that, or SADA for dental students, and they have like the Laurel Highlands Chefs Association, and so a lot of the programs here at the college really encourage students to become involved professionally, and that's a good way to do it. As far as that goes, and of course LinkedIn is a great place to to go as far as that goes. I also wanted to mention to you, as we move forward to next week, which is the week of the 27th, for the 29th, you have a discussion board posting to do for discussion board 2, and then you also have to respond by Friday the 31st. And then the other item, too, that I wanted to run by you is you have to do an evaluation of customer service. And you have to evaluate customer service either as an employee, or you can look at it as an employee and you can look at it from the customer's perspective. Or, if you've never really worked anywhere before, you can write from customer service from the only the customer perspective. So it is entirely, up to you as far as what you do. But you have to use either 3 or 4 points of criteria you're going to evaluate. There's a couple examples in that red book, and there's probably 8 of them in, assignments. But I really, really like to see what makes an organization effective or, ineffective. I hope some of you would get a job at Google. I know that they have an office down, I believe, in East Liberty, but with other Google offices throughout the country, they have free food, so you don't have to pay for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. The food is included. They have a concierge service for their employees, and so, if you need to, like the other day, I had to go pick up a pair of boots in Greensburg. If WCCC had a service like that, I could have told somebody that I needed to, get my boots, or I had to pick up some chicken and a cake for an event, and the same thing there. So Google obviously, provides preeminent service. My brother Tom works for a health savings account company, and he says when you go to Omaha, Nebraska, the railroad out there has they have their headquarters in Omaha, and he said the cafeteria is so fantastic that people come from all over the place, but they have great service. If you've ever flown on Southwest Airlines, they have wonderful, wonderful service, but they also, I know they treat their employees well, because my one coworker, Angie, her brother, Dino, works for them and really, really likes it, says it's a great first class, airline, and it seems like the pilots, the flight attendants, the baggage handlers, down the road, the people there are pretty happy. So you're looking at and evaluating customer service, like I said, from your perspective as an employee, or you can also look at customer service from the customer's perspective, and, like I said, one or both. So it's it's entirely up to you. And I hope that you all work for a really, really good company, organization, and so on, because it really does make a difference. And I hope you're able to find something you enjoy doing. I mentioned to you too, I'd like you to get involved in LinkedIn, which is a social media website. And, that's a very, very good one, because you can meet other people professionally. And that's a way to do it, is, networking. Finally, I wrote a couple notes as far as some things that I wanted to, to tell you. I have referenced Chapter 17 in our textbook, and, especially for Discussion Board 1, and as far as writing and being more accurate as far as trimming down your phrases and words and so on, but also in using the active voice. So Michael observed a woman walking down the street who fell on the ice. So I observed. So I'm using the active voice to show what happened. And I use this today, just like those pilots for Southwest Airlines. And I like Southwest, but this was a mistake that they landed at the wrong airport in Branson, Missouri. I think they were supposed to land further down the road. But the pilot said, I mistakenly saw the lights and landed the plane, and I had to brake in order to stop from going off the runway. They were very close to doing that, but they used the the active voice there. But this is the thing that I'm looking for here. On page 648, you're using simplified plain English. And that's really, really important. When you write, especially for a global audience, there are certain parts of our language that people from another country may not understand. And you have to be careful of that. It's like surfing the net. That's an older one. But, that's one that people from another country, may or may not use. So that's really why you want to use simple language. And the other part that you really want to be aware of in your language is if you use jargon, which is technical language, try to either explain it in the context of the sentence. So, I had to use a defibrillator to revive the individual, which means an electrical stimulator to the heart to revive a person who was having a heart attack. If you're using myocardial infarction, which is heart attack, you can put in parentheses a heart attack. So you can explain it, or if you have a great deal of jargon, you can naturally list it at the end of the document, and so that's useful to do. You should not use slang. Slang is informal language like kids, kicking back, and that sort of thing, and even this regional language, like yuns, hain't, red up, crick, chip, chopped ham, and so on. And then colloquial language is language that you could use in speech, like I'm sweating out a cold, or something like that, but it's a little too informal. Don't be a chicken, so that's a little too informal to use in writing, so you want to avoid that. And don't say it's hot as hell or pedal to the metal. That's what you call, a cliche. What you do want to use in your writing is precise, concise, descriptive language. And, you want, as much as possible, you want to use concrete language. So instead of saying a lot or some or a few, you can give an estimate of that, which is really, really helpful. Because I tell students in my criminal justice writing class, don't say, I found alcohol on the back floor of the vehicle. If you say, I found 6 cans of 24-ounce Pabst Blue Ribbon beer that were empty and cold to the touch, that indicates that the beer was recently consumed. Then, that's quite a number of cans of beer. But that's much more specific. Now, if you don't know specifically what is something, you can give an estimate. Like at Seven Springs, when I was there recently, snow was piled up about 2 stories high. That's a pretty good estimate. And of course, in technical writing, I'm looking for the item here. Guess I must have moved it. But what it is a pair of skid shoes for my snowblower, and I was going to have them fixed. But anyhow, you can use a simile or metaphor to do a comparison to show what something is like. But a good example is, if you're making grout or mixing grout for ceramic tile, it feels like sand. Okay, it feels like fine sand. That's a simile. I had a student that was a bodybuilder, and his one bicep resembled a grapefruit. I mean, his bicep was that big, and that's a metaphor. So you can always use that, in doing your technical language. But as much as possible, get away from this language like a lot, some, things, a couple of, and start moving into more specific descriptive language. So that is it. Thank you.